Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Renata. I am one of the producers of the On Women Festival 2022, produced by Irondale. And I would like to welcome everyone to the festival, a festival that provides women identifying artists a platform to tell their stories. And this festival was created in 2018. And each iteration of the festival has been different and unique, just like the creators and the shows that are part of it. This is the last week of the festival. We had a hybrid module for this festival. We had both online and in-person programming. If you visit our website, irondale.org, you can see everything that's coming up. We still have one main stage production that's going to be performing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the space at Irondale in Brooklyn. And then they also have an extension week. That first weekend of August, they're also going to be performing is Letters That You Will Not Get, produced by the American Opera Project. And we also have a collection of videos called the New Media Storytelling, and those can be streamed through July 30th, and you can vote for your favorites and help them win Popular Vote Awards. Tonight, we are here for the third and final artist exchange of the festival, which are conversations led and moderated by this year's curators. And I am now going to bring Melissa. Please join me.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And it's an honor being here with you and your guests. And I'm now going to leave. If you need anything, just let me know. You can take it away.
Amazing. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa Moschitto. I am the founding artistic director of the Anthropologists, a New York City-based theater company dedicated to the collaborative creation of research-based investigative theater. And I am honored to be one of the three co-curators for this year's On Women Festival. I'm also mother to two very dramatic and creative human beings, Lila and Sebastian. You'll probably hear more about them tonight. I'm joining you tonight from the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape in Washington Heights, Upper Manhattan, and representing Irondale, which is located on Munsee Lenape and Canarsie territories. You can learn more about the native land you live on or were born on at a link that we're going to pop in the chat in a minute. After there was stolen land, there were stolen people, kidnapped and forced into slavery in the American colonies. I named the original stewards of the land we're living and working on, and the people whose bodies and labor built this country, as a way to recognize the complete history of our nation, both the harm of colonization and racism, and the potential for repair. I'm honored to be able to be in conversation tonight with two phenomenal artists. I'm going to introduce them now, and you'll forgive me if I give you just the highlights of their amazing bios, as I'm eager to be in conversation with them. So first, I'd like to welcome Raquel Almassan, who is an interdisciplinary artist, facilitator, and activist. She holds an MFA in playwriting from Columbia University. Their work has been featured off-Broadway throughout the US and internationally in Greece, Italy, Slovenia, Chile, Colombia, Guatemala, Canada, and Sweden. She is a recipient of the MAP Fund, Doris Duke Grant, a New York City Women's Fund, a NISCA grant, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture grant, and many other awards and accolades. She teaches playwriting at Augsburg University through the Playwright Center and Marymount Manhattan College, and is the artistic director of La Lucha Arts, collaborating with organizations, social movements, and impacted individuals towards providing a platform for marginalized, abandoned narratives and people. And she's also a new mom, and I'm thrilled to welcome Raquel here. Hello, you made it. made it. Time and space.
Yes.
And tonight we also are joined by Johannah Maynard Edwards, who is the Executive Artistic Director of the National Women's Theater Festival based in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's directed, devised, and produced in New York City, Minneapolis, and the Triangle. A passionate arts educator, Johannah has been a teaching artist at the Raleigh Little Theater, Arts Together, Sterling Montessori, and other places. Johannah is a chief rep for PAL. That's the Parent Artist Advocacy League for the Performing Arts, and serves on the Arts Learning Community for Universal Access through the Office of Raleigh Arts. She also serves on the SETC Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Access Task Force, and is a graduate of NYU Tisch School of the Arts Playwrights Horizons Theater School. She resides in North Carolina with her husband, son, puppy, and cats, and who knows what other animals. And she is currently helming the National Women's Theater Festival 2022 festival, which opens on Thursday. So I'm extra grateful, Johannah, that you are here with us tonight. I know you have a lot going on. And I also wanted to mention that I'm fortunate to be working with and learning from Johannah during a year-long exchange between our two theater companies, thanks to a generous grant from the Network of Ensemble Theaters. Woo! We have so much to talk about, and I just want to acknowledge that in the intention to have a deep and dynamic conversation with the two of you, we aren't going to get to all the things, and it's okay. It just demonstrates that we need more conversation, and I will also be trying to bring in the voices of other artist mothers throughout the night by sharing quotes and observations. To start off, language is so important. And when Renata asked me, like, what's the name of your panel? And I kind of panicked, like, motherhood in the arts, and what does that mean? And motherhood, and should it be mothering? Should it be a verb? Like, being a mom is a verb. This is action-oriented. I will quote several times from this book, Essential Labor, Mothering as Social Change by Angela Garbs. It is phenomenal. And in the introduction, she talks about a definition of mothering, the action of mothering, which includes anyone who is engaged in the practice of creating, nurturing, affirming, and supporting life, which I love that. So to start off, I would love to know, and for everyone who's watching tonight, to know what does the action of mothering look like for you today? If you can give us a snapshot, just a little snapshot of where you are, what you're doing, who you're mothering, what does it look like? You can be as polished or unvarnished as you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Right now, I am the new mother of a 4-month-old, Rosabella, and I feel like I'm mothering her, but I'm also being mothered by my mother, who's really my biggest support system in this new process. So it's finally sleeping through the night for the last month. I was, it was about 6 months of not sleeping, and I don't think folks talk about that, like what that does to your mind and your body. And so it looks like waking up today at 6 a.m., preparing for rehearsal. Today was my first day of actually going to a rehearsal. And then just finding that balance it's all new for me of how to manage my time. And today I had to actually make those real choices of like, how many hours can I literally do mothering, and then how many hours can I be present and, for my collaborators and my process. So that's what it looks like right now. And, lots of diaper changes and baby sleeping next to me. Yeah, it's all of the new mommy things.
That's real. That's so real.
So real. And Raquel, like what you just said about, and I don't think we talk about this enough, that's literally what I'm mothering right now, is this new play that I've been devising and developing for the past 3 years. We go into tech tomorrow, and the play is called the Momversations Project. And so it's all about a 3-year snapshot of the state of motherhood in America today. And as we all know, the past 3 years have been, spoiler alert, terrible for mothers. So mothering this work into being is significant, and doing it in a space where so the majority of the team, especially the creative team, is mother artists. So we had to be in tech together to like have a rehearsal today. We had to figure out how to take care of all these children, right? So like for me, that meant my 9-year-old staying with 2 of my colleagues who are here from Kentucky to work. That means our dramaturg was in rehearsal while her au pair was with her little ones. And then we had to hurry up and get home for a Zoom production meeting where just all of the children and the dog are all in the Zoom, and we're correcting each other's children, and here, no, baby, not that, you'll get hurt. So community mothering, communal mothering, in order to make a mothering project happen. Whew, I'm tired. We're tired.
Just the image you gave us of this web that is made up of all these little, I got an image of a web made up of all these little lines that are connected, and it's like fragile and strong at the same time. And it also offers us like such a beautiful model that we can all kind of share in to figure out like how can we make it possible for mothers to remain artists or to become artists, right? But that those identities aren't separated, right? And yeah, the pandemic laid bare the work of mothering in a much less varnished way, because we could all see it there in real time on Zoom. Domestic life was broadcast into each of our homes on screens. I'm curious if that, like, did that experience offer, like, especially for you, Johannah, did it offer new opportunities for you in better understanding your collaborators, or your collaborators understanding you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's some seriously good compassion learning, you know, that when my coworkers even just saw me struggling to parent in the Zoom, you know, would do things like, you know, we're a small company, we might be the National Women's Theater Festival, but we're really just a scrappy tiny group. And so, you know, a coworker to, you know, talk to the board chair and say, hey, you know, Johannah's really struggling here. And that kid can't go to camp or anything. Because that first summer that we still put on a festival, I had arranged meticulously in January of 2020, I had my child's whole summer arranged, childcare completely knocked out so that I could do my job to put on this festival. And that was all gone. And I had to do the festival from the house with the kid in the house. And so, you know, people were looking out and saying, hey, why don't we budget some childcare that can come to her? And that made all the difference, you know what I mean? So I do think that sense of getting it more intimately involved with each other's lives, because it's all here, helped. Yes.
Yeah, that's so incredible to hear that you were able to get that kind of institutional support from your organization, because I was in so many different spaces, and I could see where some organizations I was, you know, in relationship with or events, I could see that wasn't happening, and that there was that struggle and tension. And I was on Zoom for a really large anti-oppression workshop, and the facilitator was on with her baby and said, it's during the pandemic, I can't have a babysitter over. There was no, and she did the entire training with a baby in her arms. And to me, that was so exciting. And I was like, yes, there's no, you know, I'm I'm going to, we're going to be, compressing, talking about, we're going to be talking about racism in the theater, and then we're going to be talking about healing, and I'm holding my child, and this is part of it, of embracing that, and what kind of sparked up in the room of judgment when that occurred, and folks kind of checking themselves when they saw it in real time, and saying that, yes, this is what it looks like for a mother to be able to support her in her totality at that moment. And to me, it added such a layer of that word that you used, kind of compassion, that of this is the work. This is anti-oppression work in the moment of like just supporting her where she was at. It was like mind blowing.
I'm going to unblur my background because what just happened was a baby and a mommy come running in. Just see it, y'all. Just see it. This is what it is.
It is what it is. I value that so much, Raquel, too. And thank you for sharing that. Like, I think I definitely personally had the experience of feeling very siloed, especially as a new mom, where a lot of my colleagues weren't having children yet. And, this was almost 10 years ago. And I felt like I was just so hungry to see and find like other mother artists working and figure out like what that meant and how to do it. And it felt very isolating too, because all of a sudden I couldn't go see shows and I wasn't making art. I was all consumed with raising one and then two human beings. I'm wondering like how the experience of being in this pandemic and all that it's revealed, like, did Johannah, as someone who already was a mother going into the pandemic, did you feel more prepared for that isolation? And for you, Raquel, like, were there other instances of seeing motherhood up on the Zoom screen that made you think differently about becoming a mother and mother artist?
Yes. The short answer is yes, but the long answer is I think I was more prepared for how isolating and traumatic the pandemic was going to be for our family, because of just we've just been through our whole parenting journey has been in extremes. My child's on the autism spectrum. And so, Melissa, what you said rang so true for me. Like, those early days were very isolating and isolated. Like, I was not in theater. I was not working at all for my son's first 4 years. I was purely his therapist, his case manager, his everything. I was his everything, and that was very isolating and took me so far away from the work. And that painful phase, revisiting that through the Momversations Project has been rather healing. And to be making this space so that maybe mothers who come after me don't have to do that, don't believe that's the only way. But because our journey of parenting had been so extreme so often, and we'd really just been isolated and alone, and nobody understood what we were going through because it was so hard. I think we were particularly prepared to weather the pandemic. And my husband and I would joke about that a lot. Like, this isn't even the worst year we've had in the 2000s. Like, this is nothing, because we had that resilience training, unfortunately, but fortunately,
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to hear my baby. You might hear her now for 4 months crying for milk. That's such a fascinating question, Melissa, because for me, the pandemic actually provided space for me to go through a fertility journey. I was working a lot, sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day on Zoom. My mother was a large support system, but actually it was this kind of isolating time that allowed me to pursue the kind of timeline that I needed. And so there was a lot of contemplation of balancing of, okay, now I'm going through this journey. How is that going to change? I ended up adjusting a show that I was doing, and I performed while I was pregnant. And so that was something to me that it was really important, that my body as a mother also, because my work is very physical. And I thought, so how do I, unlock those kinds of, that mentality of like, well, my body's disabled. What can I do? And I'm like, what is it that the pregnant body can do in space? And how does it look like being in a rehearsal process? And it was really a fascinating journey, and kind of like creating the steps and the blocks, and having collaborators that understood like there are certain needs that I have to have, right? And the certain institution that was supporting me being able to do that process in the middle of my pregnancy. And I was still working, and I ended up being in the hospital for 3 months of my pregnancy, right after the performance, unfortunately, but I was actually teaching playwriting classes from the hospital while I was pregnant. And so that kind of fluidity of, this isn't going to stop, like this is who I am, and things came in to support that. And the institutions I was collaborating with supported that. And I thought that was kind of really revolutionary. And I don't know if it wasn't for COVID or the pandemic and being on Zoom, I don't know if that kind of really, that understanding and and coming back to the word compassion of like, I can do this. I can be a collaborator online, even while I'm in the hospital, while I'm pregnant, like it can all happen. I just need the support to do it. And so it was really, of course it was really challenging and difficult. But that was something that was really new. And I felt like I was in a new model.
Thank you for sharing that. Just the image of you being in the hospital and still teaching on Zoom is astounding. And I did want to really lean into this question of the internal and external dichotomy of once you become a mother, once you become a parent, and where there are tangible ways in which your collaborators and institutions can support you. And I definitely want to get into that. And there's also this whole internal rearrangement that happens. I think that I don't know, I did not anticipate when I became a parent. Whenever I want to sum up what being a mom means, I am always visited by the lyrics of Brandi Carlile's song, The Mother. I don't know if you know it, the welcome to the end of being alone inside your mind, tethered to another and you're worried all the time. It's yes, that's what it is. There's just this constant buzz that's underneath, even when my kids are at school or at camp, where I'm like, what are they gonna eat for dinner? And I need to make the dentist appointment. And are they having fun? Are they okay? Are they safe? Writer Claudia Day goes deeper and more raw in an essay called Mothers as Makers of Death, which I'll share the link with everyone, and talking about what it meant to go back into a writing process. She writes, I had not been alone in a decade. I had not been alone because I am a mother, and a mother is never alone. When she is washing, sleeping, raging, she is not alone. For a mother, this is the state of things. Children hang from your clothing. They pummel you with questions, like a gunfight, like the most consuming love, like an apocalypse. They take up all of the available space. So in this time when the three of us are feeling the consummation of that space in very different ways, right? From a newborn up to elementary school age children, and it just keeps evolving and changing. Like, how do you, or where do you find space to be an artist within your role as mother and caretaker?
I'll speak a little bit about the process that I was doing while I was pregnant. It was a piece called El Odio de un País, The Hate of a Country. And it's part of a larger cycle where I'm writing plays in dedication to Latin American countries. And this one was for Costa Rica, which is where my mother's family is from. And a lot of the piece had to do with birthing and women and children dying in childbirth and in rural areas of Costa Rica. So much of the piece was about that state of mothering and loss. So you talked about mothers the words mothering and death in the same sentence, was so much about what this piece was and healing from the trauma of violence. And it really affected the dramaturgy, just the way that I was thinking about the piece, the way that I put together a sequence, and that I was kind of grappling with for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden it just came into place. And I was like, of course, there's three women, and then there's the mother and daughter, and then there's the solo, and then there's the child within the mother, right? It's all of a sudden, so many questions I had about the piece came together in such a way where I kind of put it away for 5 years, and I came back to it into this writing process. And I was with an ensemble being able to process it. And I just knew that the last piece was me dancing with my unborn child. And that was the breaking of so much cycles. And I had never felt so complete as a person, as an artist, and vulnerable, of course, because you're pushing your body to extremes, really. And but there was just something about the act of being in that space and having an audience and collaborators face that process. It really, I think for me, just created a way of transition of like, I won't be choosing one or the other. Like it was good, almost like a defiance, I think, in that moment. It's created that transition to where I currently am.
That's beautiful. Oh, I want to see your work so bad, Raquel. This is so great. It's so great. Okay, I'm gonna sum it up. Like, here's how I do it. Here's how I do creative, like try to be an artist and a mother. Cause yeah, you are never alone. Like I think the three things I need are space, time, and support. And so by space, I kind of mean like I need to take space, like, and Melissa knows this because we've been collaborating, that like I took a writing retreat in a mountain cabin alone. And I was like, listen, y'all, there's no phone, there's no internet. I'll see you in 3 days. And so like, I really need to quiet everything down, and it is relentless. Like I can't do it in a space where my child is. Like here, I'll look over here. I'm sharing a bedroom with my child right now. And so like he takes up everything. The whole bed is covered in his plushes. I mean, it just, and I need space if I'm gonna create. And so the second part is time. Like what we found with the Momversations Project is if you're gonna work with a group of moms, you need a longer time frame. You need to relax the time expectation because it takes so much longer to have a sustained attention, to build a relationship, to build trust, to get anything done, right? We have to do things in such smaller increments of productivity than the general artist public. So we just need more time. We need to book more time. And then finally, the supports part. Like I couldn't do this with, like, I have a partner who is 100% invested in my artistic life and my creative life and my life as a leader. And if he was in any way not supportive of it, I would not be able to succeed, full stop. and just the supports of this full, robust team. I really think that, you know, we're working right now as co-directors and co-dramaturgs and calling ourselves a creative team. So it's a deep bench. So like there's 4 to 5 of us who intimately are connected with the work enough to take the lead at any time. And then we've taken all that time to build the trust in the relationship that I can step back and know that one of my collaborators can lead and I can handle this other stuff for a while. Just to get on this meeting, my coworker had my son out in the pool and she's out there typing on her laptop so that I could have a few minutes in the bathroom to just collect myself and be alone, you know?
Yeah, the need for time, which is both, you know, a concept and a reality, right? Like that always really strikes me. I think space like collapsed during the pandemic, right? It was like I was just migrating from different spot to different spot in my apartment, finding a place to work while my kids were doing school and my husband was on conference calls. And a lot of those temporary things are now like the new reality, right? And even like time when my kids were a lot younger, and less self-sufficient, like couldn't get a snack for themselves, couldn't get water for themselves. Like these are huge moments, right? When you're like, oh my gosh, you can get a glass of water for yourself. You can shower by yourself. This is amazing. It was really about like, oh, how do I trick my day into giving me more time? I'm gonna get up and write for 15 minutes every morning before I go into like parenting mode, just so that I know I can like chip away at this script that I'm working on. I do want to make a shout out to this beautiful piece that is part of the new media storytelling that I hope both of you will watch, and everyone that's tuned in right now, please check it out. It's called The Art of No Time, and it's by the New Collectives, and it is such an honest, raw, but like totally beautiful expression of everything that we've been talking about right now. So it's only $10 and you get to watch all of the new media storytelling. It's such a good deal. So I'm sure Renata will put the link in the chat. Speaking of which, there is someone who wrote a comment that I want to share because it kind of segues into this next question I want to ask you, which is, Jack Sprods says, we have all been children and have been raised by someone, and it's absurd for mothering by whomever, that mothering should be invisible or ignored rather than integrated into the full spectrum of our lives. And that, like, yes, it's been so invisibilized, right? And that was a powerful thing about the pandemic, is that it showed so much of what is going on in reality and behind the scenes, what it takes to be a caretaker. Mm-hmm. So in thinking about that external role as a mother as part of your identity, but also your externalized or external needs, like how has that changed or evolved from like what spaces you can move in right now, or that you do move in, or what are the structural barriers that now you have to consider? Like for me, I'll just say it was such an eye-opener when I had 2 kids under 2 and a massive double stroller, and figuring out literally where I could go in New York City. And it changed my topography immensely. Like I wouldn't go to the grocery store, I would go to the outdoor fruit stand because it was just easier to not have to deal with doors, you know, just even structural things like that. Like how has this new identity opened up like a new reality for you?
Yeah. I want to address something as you were talking, because I think it was really important, and talking about the fear that announcing your motherhood or your pregnancy is going to have on your career. And I did not announce for quite some time. And I vividly remember being in a process that changed my life. And one of a collaborator that I was working with at the time, I really wanted to work with this particular director. I had worked with her before. And I said, let's ask this, this director that's my first choice. Oh, she just had a child. She's not going to do it. She's not going to be able to do it. And I didn't push back and say, let's contact her anyways. Why are we making that assumption? Right. And, this director has a flourishing, directing career. And then we had a conversation and she said, of course I was available. Of course I would have been available to do this workshop. Of course that would have been my priority. I would have made that work. It's important to me, so I look back at that moment of just taking in that assumption and then internalizing it and saying, oh, well, I'm not going to announce. And the stark difference between once I announced and told my, theater employers or whatever it is, it has been different. I'm not I'm not getting contacted as often as I was when I did not announce. And so I do think that it does play a large part in people's assumption in terms of your capacity or inability. And you could just note it in the responses. And so I do think that it's something that I just didn't hear people having open conversations about it. But then when I would have private conversations with, mother collaborators and the fear that they had and telling a theater or telling other collaborators that they have children before they're hired, I'm like, that for me is really, I'm still in that process, but I think we really need to just crack that open. Because it's a huge issue. And I just think there's no space to talk about it.
It took me a long time to share with my collaborators that I was pregnant, and I run my own company, and I've been fortunate in that I'm able to, in many ways, shape the way that we work to be supportive of myself and other parent artists in the company. But you're just reminding me that I really tried to hide it as long as I could, because I was worried about that reaction, or I sensed that reaction of like, oh wow, okay, she's gonna have a kid. How long is she gonna last?
Right. And even the gendered responses I got from being on Zoom after folks found out that I was pregnant, like there were certain comments or I said that was gendered. I mean, I was being responded to in a way where it was like, it's female centric, right? And you made that comment because I was a woman. You made that assumption because I was a woman with a child, right? So I started to notice, even in the spaces where folks didn't know and then they knew, how the professional boundary started to kind of be tested just by the fact that I was a mother. Like all of a sudden I was somehow deemed a little less professional. And that I still sense that in many ways.
Yeah, that's a great place where I feel called to jump in, because I do want to acknowledge that people of any gender can identify as mother. However, Raquel, what you just said about the way we multiply marginalize women and who become parents, and this, I'm just saying, I'm 10 years into being a mother. I am 42 years of living in this body, and I'm tired of apologizing for any space that I take up or my family takes up or anyone I care about takes up. Like, I'm out of shits to give about that. And I do believe that part of why motherhood and the real talk and the real challenges are invisibilized and quieted is it starts with girls. It starts with what we do to girls as a society, that we begin menstruating and we're taught to be quiet about that and not show anybody and hide your hygiene products. And this is probably the 5th time I've said it in the past 5 days, but I think we start free bleeding. I really think we start showing up with the fullness of the reality of our messy selves, that we bleed, that we have these physiological realities. And that is what makes a baby. And that is what makes a child, and what makes a family, and what makes a mother, is all these messy things happening inside women's bodies.
Mm.
Thank you for saying that, because it just feels like I feel like now my body, I just feel like my body's quote unquote a mess. And just seeing people's responses to like, yeah, I'm not bouncing back. Like, like I'm just not doing that pretty like bounce back. And it like, I think disturbs folks or bothers folks, or it's like, yeah, this is what my body went through. And, I can see it, how uncomfortable it is for others just to like acknowledge that.
This is my body, deal with it. Or you walk away. Stop making us walk away. Stop making us feel small,
Mm. Absolutely. Just all the times that you try and make yourself packaged nicer, right? It's easier to fit into this slot. And the reality is that making theater in a way that embraces and supports parents is messy and rarely goes as planned. But you have to be willing to be flexible in a different way, or just like open up to new possibilities of how to make work.
And what I have noticed time and again on this topic is that once you make space to be a little bit more radically inclusive to a parent's needs, like for example,
Hey Mom, can I watch Octonauts here?
In a little bit, okay? As soon as I'm done with this, you can turn on Octonauts, okay? Thank you.
Can I turn the volume down?
Yes, you can turn the volume down. We got y'all. My Octonauts. Yes.
Turn it on right now.
See, yes. What was I saying? Oh, that if you just like, for example, add a pumping break into the tech schedule for the director who needs to pump, that is more inclusive and more compassionate to the rest of your workforce. Everyone on the team would benefit from taking another break, to having more downtime, to having some time to rest and recover. Everyone benefits if you do these small things that are helpful to the parent on the team.
So this is making me think of one of the quotes from this book, Essential Labor, that I'm just going to walk around quoting because it's so good. But she writes, "Love and care, like social change, are slow and follow circuitous paths. They take days, not hours, years, not months. The work may seem inefficient, but love doesn't play by the same rules as the economy. The economy could stand to bend to the will of decency and care. What if we built a system that lets us actually care for the people who care for us?" And I think, like, in so many ways, I've seen in your work, Johannah, and with National Women's Theater Festival, that attempt to build this new way of working, not just creating theater, but in making work that works for the people who are doing it. And I remember, that summer of 2020 when you all went completely digital, virtual, and it was incredible for me as an artist to be able to take all these workshops and be in virtual spaces with other parent artists. It was like the most parent artists that I had shared space with ever, I think. And that was just so important. So I want to make sure we have time to talk about mothering as labor. We've hinted at it, right? We've started to approach that. This year's festival, the On Women Festival, was designed to be a celebration of the women who have kept society running in all facets of life, current and past, and the stories they've made. And I think a lot has been said, but more needs to be said about just what this pandemic season, I don't know what to, it's like we can't keep track of it in months anymore. It is the pandemic season, like what it did to mothers, to women. So just some stats: in 2021, more than 300,000 women left the labor force. That was when that was in September of 2021, when school was starting again, but it was hybrid or fully remote. More than 300,000 women left the labor force. And why did this happen? It was driven by a lack of childcare, or a lack of affordable childcare, or of stable childcare. And it really exposed fault lines right in our society. There's a lot that's invisibilized about art in general, and that has started to be like lifted up from where it's been buried, right? Especially around pay, artist pay. And I was surveying a group that I'm a member of, that I think you both are members of now, on Facebook, of theater moms from all around the country. And there were so many things that people wanted to say, or how they wanted to be heard. But one thing in particular, where someone wrote, "My nanny makes way more per hour than I do, so in most cases I'm paying to take on work instead of actually making any money on the gig I'm on." And that hit me hard, because I feel like I'm sitting at that nexus of being underpaid as an artist, and I pay myself, but still underpaid as an artist and underpaid as a caretaker. And I'm just curious to hear from you, like, how these two identities, and in terms of labor and value, like where that hits you, what that brings up for you.
John, it was really impressive when you said that there's so many identifying bodies that are mothering. And when I think about that, I've been facilitating with young people in communities for 20 years. And I think about, what is that act? That was mothering. It was not just theater making, right? It's working with vulnerable communities, and whether it was in incarcerated settings, whether it's in public schools, whether it's in shelters and community centers, there's something about that act of that labor that goes beyond just theater making. That is when you are taking care of a community, when you are taking care of this space, you're taking care of a group. You're seeing a group through not only a theater process, but a political process, or that, to me, that requires so much more of myself. And I also directed programs for young people where it's not just about them making theater, it's them, how can I find them, therapy sessions? How can I find them food resources? How can I find them housing resources? How can I find them, resources to transition into college? And to me, that's been, I was like, oh, I've been mothering before the physical act of like giving birth. There's also been an act of I was like, I realized so much of my, what people would call professional career has been the act of taking care of communities. And it's not, nobody pays you for that, right? It's not on the skill set or on your resume, or like, this is also the skill you have to have when you're facilitating in these spaces. It's the unsaid labor that one is doing that the institutions aren't doing. But that person who's mothering in that room, that body who's taking care of that community, is so much part of being able to make theater with any group. And so I think that like you said, that needs to be brought to the surface, and say that needs to be valued as a as a skill set. And then the other part is the terrifying dilemma that I am going to be facing very soon as I come back and into space and working full force, the different juggling everything is, I'm a single parent, so working and taking, childcare right now, my mother's being an incredible support system, but that won't be the case all of the time. So it is, I use the word dilemma because I don't know what other word to use. It's not like an option or a choice, or I've got to make some choices. No, this is a dilemma. It's a dilemma because the price of childcare, just doing a little bit of research in my area, I'm like, this is a dilemma. It's a dilemma. And I'll let Johannah speak further on it because you've been in the thick of it.
Oh, Raquel, that is like, yes, it's a dilemma. And we have to collectively work on it. We act like it's just the mother's responsibility, and yet we provide her with nothing to do it, you just like got.
And this conversation is, to me, I feel like it's so critical. I know that the three of us were all very active and aware and considering like what do we do now in July 2022 in a post-Roe America, right? Where we're talking about structural inequities or gaps or things that are lacking once you have children. But in 2020, it was reported that among 11 developed countries, the United States has the highest maternal mortality rate. And it's actually been increasing. It's been steadily increasing. And of course, we are well aware of a lack of paid parental leave in the postpartum period, right? And this is just one of the many ways in which the undoing of Roe v. Wade will negatively impact pregnant people. What role do you see yourself having as a mother artist in a post-Roe America?
Well, making this show right now, which is one thing. And here's another statistic. Women in America today are 50% more likely to die in childbirth than their mothers.
It's astonishing. It's
getting worse.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share a little bit of something that's quite personal, but I had preeclampsia, and then I had a host of other medical issues, and I ended up having like an emergency C-section, which was very scary. And my doula was the one who really presented me all of these, because I switched offices 4 times because I was dismissed by doctors who said I wasn't sick, nothing's wrong with you. And I was just deteriorating until I ended up in the hospital. So it was amazing to me how I was just being dismissed. And I was learning all of this trial by error. And then it was actually another theater maker who happened to be a doula who was supporting me through that system, through navigating the system, and telling me they're like, Raquel, these are the mortality rates of women in New York State. And so I started to see myself in that system, because when it's happening to you, you can't quite grasp it. And then you taking a step back, you're like, oh, okay. So I was like stuck in this ping pong, system that kept throwing me back and forth, and makes you like, and so I'm fiercely more and more open with all my communities. And I think it's going to highly influence me as a theater maker and also as an educator, because I'm with young communities all the time, and say the attack against women is full force. The attack against female identifying bodies is full force.
Yeah. Yeah. Raquel, I gotta get you to see the show, but yeah, we interviewed a woman who is a woman of color, mixed race, in a larger body. Medically speaking, she was labeled obese. She also happened to be a medical doctor with a Princeton education, and she self-diagnosed herself with preeclampsia, and she was dismissed 3 times until her baby was stillborn, and she nearly died herself. And this is so if anyone's watching this, here are two real life stories of women who live in New York State, the bluest of blue. The bodies are under attack. It's really happening. This is really, really a threat to our lives.
And I am
sorry
so
we didn't answer your question, Melissa.
No. It all is. I'm so grateful. Well, you're living the answer, right? You're both living the answer for like, what is it that you can offer as a mother artist right now, and the work that you're doing with the Momversations Project absolutely deals with that head on. And we'll put the links in there so you can watch it, because it's going to be streamed, right?
Yep, live streamed and in person.
Live streamed. I'll be there watching on the screen because I can't get to North Carolina.
And radically accessible. We have captions, and we're going to have ASL providers. It's going to be all the things.
It's fantastic.
I can't wait to see this piece, Johannah. So I'm so excited.
And that's also what I love about this festival, the On Women Festival, is that there is work that is made accessible to audiences who might not still be able to get into a theater because we are still in a pandemic. There's probably like 5 other questions that I still wanted to ask, but I'm trying to narrow things down because I'm mindful of the time. Oh, this is so rich too. One day we're all going to be in the same physical space at the same time. I'm just putting that out there now. I was thinking a lot about these sort of either tropes in theater or like these kind of cliche statements. So all the time we hear about risk taking with art. Like, where are you taking risks as an artist? And sometimes that can be really motivating. It can be really essential. But like, what happens? What does it mean for a mother artist to take risk, to whether that's being encouraged to take a risk and fail, or, where are the stakes higher for a mother artist to take a risk? Like, is that something that you've grappled with as an artist?
Go ahead, Raquel.
Yeah. I think that the pressure, when I say the phrase, the pressure is on, the pressure is on. There is very little time. And so this idea that you can just, explore it. Right now I'm in a workshop and we're like exploring different, things, and the trajectory is what it is. And so I do feel like every time I'm leaving the house, it's a risk. I'm weighing that, and the time I'm spending in the rehearsal and spending on crafting my work, it has to be so intentional. Like it feels very different now than it did before. It really feels like I'm carving in stone, and so I have to really be careful with my time. And losing time is a risk because you're balancing so much.
Yeah, yes, amen. The risk for mothers is exponentially more, right? For all those things. And because the systems that are set up currently, again, like Raquel was saying earlier, we count moms out. So if you flop, or if you make a mistake, or if it's not perfect, or it's a little weak, or it's not up to your usual, what people are used to from you, then they count you out, and that's that. And they're not going to call again, and you're not going to book more work. And that sucks. That extra pressure really, really sucks. And cliche that we've been trying to work with in this process is, all the things about perfection, but we've been saying perfect is the enemy of done. And for us as a group of moms trying to work on this work, sometimes we just have to get something done. Like we can like get into all the details, and yeah, we're workshopping this piece and we can go really far down it. And sometimes we have to listen, perfect is the enemy of done. Let's get it done.
I might be paraphrasing incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure there's a quote by the writer Anne Lamott that goes something like, perfectionism is the tool of the oppressor. And you can be your own oppressor, right? If you're like, well, I can't get this art out in the world unless I do it perfectly. So yeah, what you just said was really resonating for me, because what do we risk if we don't put ourselves out there, and if we're not making work, and if we're not making space for our work to be seen? So
yeah, the outcomes are bad, right? Like that's the other thing we're learning when you look statistically. Like mental health it's not great for mothers and things like that. And so that is the risk, right? If you're not getting to fulfill, if you're an artist like we are, and you're not able to fulfill that part of your identity, the risk is death. The risk is our, atrophy. The risk is heartache, depression, not being completely fulfilled in your life, and therefore not able to fully show up for this child in the vibrancy and the fullness of yourself, because part of you is dying.
I thank you so much for saying that, because there is that guilt that is inherently put onto you. You're like, that being a theater artist is not a serious profession, and that the time that you're spending making art or doing theater, that it's not as important as the mothering. And so that I'm already kind of feeling that pressure, and that judgment, and then having to just have that conversation with yourself and transform that perception constantly is where I'm at. And so the image that, yeah, I want my daughter to be able to live fully and live her dreams and pursue what she wants in her totality. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not the model. Right? It never transforms, right? So
as we wrap up, a lot has been put out there. I'm curious, like, I would love to know from each of you what you want other theater makers and institutions to know about, like one tangible thing that can make your work as a mother artist more viable.
Well, they need to know, if my little company, $150,000 a year company, can figure this out, anybody can. Any company can figure this out. None of us are making a living wage working for this company. I'm saying it right now. That is where we are in our growth and development. We were able to offer $500 and $1,000 stipends to work on this show. And for Emily Boyd Dahab and her children in the next room, she needed the stipend and just like a place to stay in Raleigh to come do the work. And so we could get the rooms ready, like we could accomplish that. So we can do it. You can do it. Anyone can do it. It's just trying just a little bit, and a little bit goes a long way when you're used to nothing.
Yeah, just like naming that incremental growth. Like my company, we're about half your budget size, based on last year, which was an exceptionally big year, so we're shrinking again. But we started several years ago, offering childcare stipends. Nothing huge, but it was something for every rehearsal to any parent artist that needed it, just to help defray the cost, and having more open conversations with artists who come to work with us, like, what is it that you need? Like, whether it's the hours that we're scheduling rehearsals to be in, or providing that little bit of extra support, or like pre-pandemic, saying, okay, kids can come into the rehearsal room, which is great for some people and not great for other people, but it's part of this ongoing conversation and doing that little bit as you go and flexing and then getting to the next level of what it is that you can offer. And PAL, of course, the Parent Artist
I was about to say.
Advocacy League, is just an incredible resource there for all the ways that theater companies, large and small, can be and should be operating.
Yeah, if you're scratching your head about, well, how do we do this? How do we start? They will take your call. Someone at PAL.
You don't have to think so much.
You don't have to think. They will help you.
Yeah. And I think, Melissa and Jenna, what you're saying is just actually just making space, a conversation of whether it's whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a theater education, whether it's like you're saying, independent companies, of like making space and finding out what parents need. Even having that conversation of like, what is it that you need? Let me not make an assumption that childcare stipend, maybe that's enough for some folks and maybe that's not enough for other folks, or just having that conversation. I think I ended up forcibly having to have that conversation with the institution that I worked for. And it kind of came to a head, and I was like, oh, you've never had this conversation. And then the students got involved, and then like the students are having a conversation. Well, what do you think? Should we continue with Raquel on Zoom while she's pregnant and in the hospital? Or do you want to it's like that kind of conversation started happening, and it was messy. But I was like, if there's more organized ways so that people don't have to be in those kind of do or die situations, that it doesn't just come right at the very end, but that it's kind of implemented in an early stage of a process. I'm like, I wish I had that months and months ago.
Raquel, I love that you said that. And I think that's the not supposing and not assuming, but to ask the individual artist what it is that they need to participate, not assuming that something that Raquel needs is something Johannah needs, is something Emily needs. Right. And like, for example, 2 of my creative collaborators on this project work at research universities. So they have this other institutional support that will happily pay for them to travel here to do this work, because it's part of what that other job wants them to do. So if I had just assumed that they wouldn't want to be a part of this process because I couldn't fly them to North Carolina, I would have missed out on these amazing collaborators who were going to fly here on a university's dime.
I want to share with you another comment that was left that is just a really good place to wrap things up. Jax writes, thank you to all 3 of you for being vulnerable and sharing your personal experiences. As we know from other movements, visibility is such an important step. So I want to absolutely amplify that gratitude to the 2 of you for speaking so openly and candidly, for showing us and letting us hear the background, what is happening in your lives and in your art. And I cannot wait to see the work that each of you has coming up. And I look forward to when we can both get in the same room together. But thank you both. We'll continue having this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
And thank you to Irondale on Women Festival for hosting and making space for this conversation. I'm super grateful. So now we get to wait till Renata ends the call. And we'll wave goodbye to our YouTube viewers. Goodbye, everyone. Good night. Now we gotta go make sure kids are in bed. Luckily, my husband was home.